Before I give you what I think would have been a much more interesting Booker long list, I want to quickly answer a point made by another YouTuber about a video that I made last year. Britta Burler, I think her name is, talking about women writers, um, talks about my review of Hannah Yangakara's A Little Life. And she quotes me saying that I feel that Yangakara failed to depict an authentic male friendship um, because she was a woman writer. I didn't say that, actually, so I want to say this way. I said, actually, I feel that she depicted female friendships and sort of used, so essentially, bear with me, that when I watch females when I watch women together, when I look at female friendships, and I've watched female friendships over over many years. My partner has had very long friendships of 20, 30 years, and I've watched them and witnessed and observed them. There is a certain quality to female friendships that is different to male friendships, and I think Yangakara wrote a novel about female friendships. The characters happen to be male. Now, I feel that's a failing in the book, but I don't think she can't write male relationships because she's a female. I think that she either chose to or made a creative mistake. So it is not about that. Of course I believe that male writers can write from the point of view of women, and women writers can write from the point of view of males. I was criticising Hannah Yangakara not because she was a female writing about males, but that she didn't write authentic male characters in her work. It's a different point. But anyway, my Booker long list. Now it's interesting. I've just found out. Of course, I've been going on about why didn't they shortlist Solar Bones by Mike McCormack? Mike McCormack is by far one of the best novels I've read this year. Well, of course, I didn't realise that it's only books published in the UK, and Solar Bones is published in Ireland with distribution in the UK, so it isn't eligible. Interestingly enough, Pond, my book of last year, which sits in the Booker window, wasn't eligible because it was seen to be a book of short stories, whereas All the Man Is also a kind of, is not dissimilar, but that was eligible. So I kind of feel that they play slightly fast and loose with their form. So I am absolutely going to include Pond, Claire Louise Bennett. This should have been in the shortlist. This is a brilliant piece of writing. It is formally interesting. Its voice is one of the funniest, most eccentric, most insightful, most witty, most personable voices in literature for years. It is a genuinely original piece of writing. I can't recommend it enough. She's just a gifted prose writer, and it's a voice, whether male or female, of high originality. The fact that it's not on the list is just shocking, given that it could be. Most of these I've talked about in other videos. Sorry, before I get to the other books, because I'm running a prize this year, the Republic of Consciousness Prize for short presses. Some of these books have been submitted for my prize, and I've read them for that reason, but I am one of 8 judges. So whatever I think is only going to have a 1 in 8 chance of influencing the outcome of the long list, the short list, but it does give you an indication of certainly where I'm leaning in terms of the prize. Um, I think that just scrapes into the Booker eligibility because it was published in October last year. Is Alex Phoebe's Playthings, which I've talked about, which is an uh, it's about a real person, a judge in Germany at the turn of the century called Daniel Schreiber, or Schreiber, um, who wrote an account of his own breakdown, and he had the most profound breakdown, visions, um, delusions, paranoias, um, um, and he had this breakdown. He wrote a journal about it that became very famous. Freud has written about it, and lots of other people wrote about it. But he then went to have another breakdown and didn't write about that. And Alex Phoebe, in the most precise and wonderfully clear and efficient prose, writes about what that breakdown might be like. And it's one of those brilliant novels which, even in the third person, gets as close to the lived experience of a person that you can get. I think we really feel the frustration of a man who believes he's completely sane as he is being diagnosed as being, you know, very insane. And he is. I mean, he is a man um, who believes he is essentially going to be the beginning of um, a new race of people on the earth, and his whole body is being infected by rays from outer space. Um, but it is just it's a brilliantly human book, um, and I recommend it highly. It was shortlisted for the Wellcome Prize, um, and it's wonderful. Next is Born on a Tuesday by Elnathan John, a Nigerian writer. This is an unusual book. It starts. I've read quite a lot of African literature, and it conforms at the beginning to the kind of oral tradition, and very simple prose, the story unfolding with great clarity and lack of pretension. But there's something else going on here. Um, the protagonist commits an awful crime at the beginning, and there is something kind of redemptive about his work with a mosque. And essentially, it's about how fundamentalism can infect a religious community, and then how political power has to deal with fundamentalism, and how even the innocent get caught up in this. But I think it's a really powerful story about fundamentalism, but also how Islam is just a day-to-day religion for many, and it's not about fundamentalism. It is just about community, especially in poor countries, finding work within a community. And then the third act of this book is hugely powerful, as the protagonist gets caught up in the struggle between the state and a fundamentalist movement. And I found it to be a deeply powerful novel, and it really should have been longlisted. And Britta talks in her thing on longlist and diversity. Here we have an African novelist writing at the height of his powers about very topical issues, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, sensitive, intelligent piece of writing. I mentioned earlier Dodge and Burn by Serafina Madsen. I do think this book is flawed, I have to say, but when it's not flawed, it is just fantastic. And that's these extended passages as the protagonist talks about mythology from the world. It's the idea that there's something central to this book is that that we can transcend our own worlds, and that all cultures throughout time, throughout the world, have their ways of transcending the body, transcending this reality. And she somehow makes so compelling that this tradition, this ubiquitous tradition, this kind of trans-temporal tradition, we should take very seriously and think about what it's saying about us. And some of those episodes are just extraordinary. And I think it's a really interesting novel, written by a woman, which about a subject. There's there's a lot of drug taking in it. There's a lot of sex. There's a lot of road trip stuff in it. And this is very much a kind of male preserve, stemming from the late 40s through the 50s and the Beat Poets. And Serafina not only kind of claims it for women, but claims it for a kind of for the kind of 1990s 2000 generation. So that the drugs are more modern, but the story is the same. A sort of hypnotic, pharmacological, redemptive look at otherness across the American West and much in Europe. But it's got issues, but its originality just overcomes those things. Counter Narratives by John Keane, another Fitzcarraldo novel. One of the most astonishing books I think I've ever read. And it's one of those books I just didn't think I would enjoy. It's because in a sense, it has a kind of political agenda. And that for me is usually a dead end. But what John Keane has done is essentially he's sort of rewritten stories from this kind of late 16th century up to the 20th century about the black experience, and it's very much at the moment. I haven't finished it because I'm taking it so slowly because I can't believe how good it is. So we have stories about the slave trade in South America and in North America, and they are stories which he kind of sets up as newspaper narratives or oral stories or sort of other kind of forms that are contemporary to the stories, and he kind of rewrites them, so they're kind of counter narratives to the narratives of the time, but they do in their own way kind of reveal actually really profound truths about the historical experience of black people or African American people in that side of the Atlantic, and it's just exceptional in terms of the writing quality, the ambition, the power it has, and if you're, what someone says here, Keane's collection of shorts and longer historical fictions are formally varied, mould-breaking and deeply political. He's a radical artist working in the most conservative of genres, short story, I guess, and any search for innovation in this year's US fiction should start here. It's that and so much more. Because it's so personal. The stories feel so personal, so human, and it's beautifully published. But this, it probably wouldn't get in because it's so formally innovative and it's not a single narrative in the way that narrative voice in the way that Pond is. But this would make any long list for anything. It would just have to get in there because of its greatness. And then finally, Solar Bones by Mike McCormack. This is a run-on sentence. I.e., it is one sentence that runs on, but it's written in paragraphs, but there isn't a full stop. And it says, Marcus Conway is dead, so right on the back. So we know that the narrator is dead. Whether the narrator knows he's dead is another matter. And as Mike McCormack says himself, the dead have no time for full stops. what I love about this, I mean, I do love the run-on sentence as a formal device. When I was reading this, within about 12 pages, I thought, why aren't all novels written like this? And they can't, because they're not written by great writers, and McCormack is a great writer. But there is some, and this is effortlessly done, and this is no way a conceit, but there is something about the way Marcus, our narrator, describes things. He has a great description. He has a great power to describe the thingness of things. There's a great moment early on where he's standing watching a huge wind turbine being taken down a road on the back of a low-loading truck. And what we have is a great sense of thingness, quiddity and hexaity about this wind turbine. But more than that, it transcends its utility to become a thing in and of itself, which I think actually is a kind of profoundly moral act in writing, because that's what we have to do to human beings. We have to. I mean, it's that great Kant categorical imperative is people are ends and not means. And there's a way that Marcus talks about things that gives us a clue how we must look at the world and look at. He does it with things, and of course he does it with people. But the thingness and the transcendence of thingness beyond utility. There's something beautifully moral and compelling about that. And the fact that Marcus is an ordinary man with an ordinary family is wonderful. There are, just for those people who might find it daunting, there are commas. There just isn't a full stop. But it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful book, and a beautiful, gentle, and unassumingly profound piece of writing. So I would, for anyone interested in literature, at its most, I mean, that's what my so my short list, my long list, short long list, it's literature at its most daring, its most human, at its most formally innovative, but also it's not in any way strident or difficult. It's just trying to reach something that one can't quite do in formal storytelling. So let's just go back. Solar Bones by Mike McCormack, published by Tramp Press. Counter Narratives by John Keane, published by Fitzcarraldo Editions. Dodge and Burn by Seraphine Madsen, published by Dodo Inc. Born on a Tuesday, Elnathan John, published by Cassava Republic. Playthings by Alex Phoebe, published by Galley Beggar. And Pond by Claire's Louise Bennett, also published by Fitzcarraldo Editions. So that's my alternative short long list. Well, it's my short long list, basically. It's my short list. But I'm going to be reading others from the actual short long list, which could make it onto my short list. But I'll do something on that later. This has gone on slightly. I apologise. Thank you.